welcome to episode number 9 of the Leader Equation. We have Jillene Snell and Vija Williams of BK Companies, so Ben Kinney Companies, with us today. And we are so thrilled to have them. We're going to let them kind of walk us through who they are and what they do in a few seconds. But let me also introduce you to my lovely co-host, Christy Belt-Grossman, who is the owner of Ops Boss Coaching. And then I, of course, am Lindsay Soprani, and I'm the owner of Lindsay Soprani Team and Soprani Consulting. So welcome, everybody. We're so thrilled to have you guys. We're so thankful for you being here. And what we're going to do is I'm going to kick it over to Christy to kind of walk us through the next pieces here, and she'll get you guys to introduce yourselves.
Awesome. So welcome to the leader equation. We're going to start with quick fire, but before I do that, let's introduce our guests. So Vija, do you want to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. My name's Vija Williams, and I work at the Ben Kinney Companies. We call it BKCO. I run our brokerages division, and I'm on the leadership team for our ancillary services, which is BKCO mortgage, title, and escrow. And I think Jillene will also agree that we also all kind of work in all departments to a certain extent.
Love that. And Jillene, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Tell us about what your role is with Ben Kinney.
Well, to add to what Vija said, we are some days the janitor and some days the CEO. So I work in leadership for the Ben Kinney teams and expansion teams, and have been doing that for 14 years this December.
Oh, that's amazing. So unusual in our industry. For those of you who are listening who are not in real estate, I want you to know that the Ben Kinney team and the Ben Kinney Companies are renowned worldwide in the real estate arena. And with Keller Williams are the number 2 team, I believe, out of 170,000 realtors. So just to give you a little bit of frame of reference. So, okay, we're going to go through quick fire real quick. And I'll ask each of you the questions. So how many years have you been in the business, Vija?
17 in the business, 8 with Ben.
Perfect.
1 as GM.
And 1 as GM. And Jillene, how many years in the business? How many years with Ben?
14 years with Ben this December, 19 years in the real estate industry. Next year will be 20 years in 2020.
That's amazing. Wow. So a lot of experience in the room today. How many people were you leading when you started in real estate? And how many people are you leading now, Vija?
1 and about 1,400.
And Jillene?
Awesome.
Just myself in the beginning, and now 25 people, 35 people directly, and 250 indirectly.
That's incredible. Jillene, you were 30 under 30 agent at one time, correct?
I was.
That's awesome. Amazing. Okay, so morning routine. What is your morning routine? What are some tips that you would share with people listening?
Coffee is definitely a tip that I would share for everybody listening. Much coffee.
They're in Seattle, in case you don't know that.
And then pretty sure there's coffee in my veins. And then for me, it depends on how you're wired, but I love journaling every morning. Sometimes that looks like the 5-minute journal app. Sometimes that looks like notes on my phone.
I love that. Love that. Jillene, what's your morning routine? I know you have 2 little ones, so it probably involves them too.
So I have to wake up a little bit earlier, which is usually around 5:15, 5:30. Shower, drink cappuccinos, and then really I focus on my mindset through journaling and writing down my gratitude and my vision for that day. So it starts with mindset because I think mindset far precedes action. And I review today's plan that was written the night before, and then I drink a green smoothie. So it's almost identical every single day, which is a little boring, but it happens to.
Well, it obviously is very successful. So you tied into the next question, which is, how do you prep the night before to have a successful day the next day?
Oh, me?
Jillene, you want to go into that? You kind of referenced that already.
You can go into that.
Yeah, sure. So I have a template on my iPhone that's in my notes, and it's called Plan the Day the Night Before. And it's a template, so I can just go into it every single evening, review my calendar, see what I have going for the next day, and then revise my template with my priorities. And then really getting clear about what my number 1 priority is, so that tomorrow I don't start with the number 5 priority, I start with the number 1. But really, I'm also, as I'm reviewing my calendar, I'm looking at who's attached to it. And my important relationships that are attached to my calendar appointments and making sure that I'm prepared. Because if there's a person attached to that calendar appointment, I don't want to walk into that relationship and that meeting with them unprepared. And plus it allows for meetings the next day. So shorter, more concise meetings.
I love that. We actually last week on the podcast talked about how people are the most important part of your business. So I love that you incorporate that into your planning. Vija, what's your evening plan?
Yeah, I think we both do a variation of Ben's plan the next day, the night before. I'm a more I don't think as operationally as the three of you guys. So I'm a little more intuitive. Every single day though, and every week, probably what's more interesting for me is my Sundays, I think, rather than the days. Every Sunday I do my 411 for the week, which is a great productivity tool. You can Google me on YouTube, and I have a video about it. And I make sure, like Jillene said, that that I'm super in tune to my priorities. Some Sundays I email that to Ben, and when I do, he typically emails back and course corrects me, which I love.
How fast does he do that?
Pardon me?
How fast does he do that?
Pretty fast, and it's very our communication style with each other is very direct. It's not sugar coated, so it'll be like, nope, leadership recruiting isn't number one. You need to move it up to number one. That'll be it, maybe. Or why is number 5 not number 1? Why is whatever. I don't always email it to Ben, it for a variety of reasons, because it doesn't change. It doesn't change a lot. I'm the director of growth is my official title, and it's growth. And so it's just about like what tactics is it agent growth this week? Is it leadership growth? But it's always growth, right?
We're going to come back to that after quickfire. I have a question on that. So be a book that impacted you the most.
Oh, I have a great answer for this. I highly recommend it. Lately, over the last year, it's called Simply Said. I have a lot of books that have impacted me, but Ben actually gave it to me, and it's a book on communication, and it's single-handedly, I've read it 3 times this year, and it's changed the way I communicate with people.
Love it. And Jillene?
So in my 20s, the most impactful book it's called The 4 Agreements. It's not about business, it's about life. And I have some more shares on that later. I've got 3 actually. So the second one is 48 Laws of Power. And it's not a book for everyone, but it was really impactful for me in my life, especially around managing emotions. And then the third book is called Atomic Habits. I love that book because it talks about the action that you take, not being about just making progress or accomplishing a goal. It's about each action that you take being a vote for the person that you want to be and your identity that you want to become. So that really hit home for me. I think I read it last year, and it's made a big impact because let's just say today I go on a run. It's not about that run. It's about being a runner, or it's about being healthy and fit. So that small action leads to my identity, and my identity is that I want to be healthy and fit.
I love that. That's big thinking. All right, last quick fire, superpower. Are you going to say your own superpower or someone else's superpower? Vija.
I think Jillene's superpower, it's plural for her, but I think that it's grace under fire, and being a solid rock. She's really good emotional regulation, and I think people feel her calmness and her stillness in the midst of storms.
I love that. I know I've experienced that. Jillene, what's Vija's superpower?
I don't think I could put it into one word, although she is commanding in a very powerful way. And I love to say that because she's female. But I think there's this book I'm reading now called The $1 Trillion Coach. And it was a coach who coached like the Silicon Valley companies, Apple and Google and those big ones. And the coach had a knack of not managing people or telling them what to do, but knowing how to bring people together in a positive way, and realizing that that having a cohesive team was about the type of coaching that you did, and she has a way of doing that. So I think she could be a $1 trillion coach.
I love it.
Coach. Oh, there you go.
I totally could.
Right. So We're now going to kind of dive into the real meat We obviously have two amazing powerhouse women who are leaders in their own right, and we have a ton of questions for them. The leader equation, if you haven't joined us before, we've got entrepreneurs and business owners, as well as directors of operations, sales directors, shotgun, we call them shotgun leaders, the people riding shotgun with someone else who's leading the charge. And Lindsay's going to take us into those questions. So let's do it.
Yeah. Well, I know that a lot of people are sitting here wondering for both of you guys, because you are amazing leaders, why Ben? What made you choose him? So let's just get right into it. Like, what did he possess, or what drew you to him as a leader? And we'll start with Vija.
Yeah, so for those of you I haven't had the opportunity to meet, I do consider myself an entrepreneur and have had a really successful real estate business for 17 years. And then in the last 5 years, I grew a business that had, $1.8 million in revenue at its peak. So, to come work for Ben was a really, really big career change for me. It was a really big shift in my career. And I have a couple answers to that. And I think they're answers that if anyone's watching who is a leader and wants to attract leaders, this is great insight. One of them was, I know Ben really well. And so I've known him for about 8 years. He's been my coach and my mentor and my friend for about 8 years. And he coached me into success in my entrepreneurial journey. So I think that's the first lesson for anybody. He didn't try to recruit me. What he did is try to, get me successful. And there's a huge amount of trust. And so when we started talking about me coming to work for him, that he knew everything. He knows me really well. And I didn't have to pretend. I didn't have to go into this role with a new manager and pretend that I knew more than I did. Ben knew exactly what I knew and my strengths and where I was going to show up with weaknesses and everything. And that was really great, because I felt like I could be authentic. And it also put me in a position where I was really coachable. The third reason, and probably why I came to work for him a year ago rather than maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, is I started seeing other amazing leaders either getting attracted to working with BKCO and Ben or developing. Jillene was one of them. She was one of the people I attributed it to when Ben and I came together. There was 3 people that I was like, watching Jillene's growth, watching him bring in a couple people, and watching him develop a couple people. I felt like the organization was at a point that it was ready for really powerful leaders that weren't just the founder.
I love that, as you're talking, it's making me think about Gary Keller and some of the leaders that he has brought into his organization, Mo Anderson and other people, and how long he was in relationship with them before they came into the business. It's actually a really smart strategy, just exactly as you said. He knew who you were, you knew who he was. You were both invested and very clear and authentic with one another. And I love that.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess to summarize it, at the end of the day, I've got really big wealth goals, and I feel strongly that I'm going to hit them sooner with Ben, but more importantly, that I'm going to enjoy the journey better.
Love that. Jillene, what was it that attracted you to working with Ben?
Well, I think, 14 years ago, it was something different than it is today. And I still choose him every single day and every week and month to be my leader. And those are different reasons now, and some of the same as well. But in the beginning, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. I didn't have a clear path of that because I was 22, right? And I just knew that I wanted to be a part of something fast-paced and growing versus like a pond of a stagnant pond of stability. So Ben provided me a vision that allowed me to see that growth and change would always be there and be present if I worked with him. And in that book, The 4 Agreements that I talked about, one of the 4 agreements is being your impeccable word. So in the beginning, he'd say we were going to do something, and we always did it. And even if I didn't quite believe that it would happen or take place, he always found a way, and he was his impeccable word, which consistently got my buy-in for him as my leader, and still to this day. in the beginning, he didn't say, oh, we're going to be the #3 real estate team in the nation, according to Wall Street Journal. Back then it was other things. It was helping other people succeed. And over time it was making at least 10 people millionaires, which he has already been able to do because he is his impeccable word. And now he is making such an impact with helping people build wealth, like Vija said. And so, you know, that's the reason why I stay with him to this day.
I love that, you know, because I see a gap in that area frequently among like the teams that we all coach and mentor. All of us mentor other people outside of our own teams. And I think there's often a gap between casting the vision and you wanted to be fast-paced, achievement-oriented, success-oriented, moving forward in life. But sometimes there's a gap of the leader casting the vision and when it actually happens, or does it actually happen? What were the keys? And Vija, I think you're probably the same way. Like you're with Ben because you just said you can get there faster where you want to go. What are the keys to closing the gap between casting the vision and how we're going to get there and actually executing and achieving it? And what advice would you have for those who are following and working with side by side another leader? I know that wasn't on our list.
It's okay. I didn't read the list.
That's good.
So we're fine.
We always go off the table.
I mean, I not to deflect, but on one hand, Christy, I think that's a question for Ben, because I don't know that I can answer how what Ben thinks he does to do that. How
do you participate in that? How do you participate, facilitate, accelerate that as his shotgun leader? We pulled out the hard questions for today.
I mean, okay, I can answer it. I mean, are you talking about with wealth building or with the company?
No, just casting the vision. What I see a gap, Lindsay, do you know what I'm talking about? I see a gap where a rainmaker, a team owner, an entrepreneur has a vision. They want a fast-paced, fast-moving #2 person. The #2 person wants to move fast, and then there's a gap because the leader isn't going fast enough.
Well, and that's the beautiful part of this question, is that what they're having a hard time articulating is it's because they are the gap, right? Like you are the gap. Like you were the one who was like, okay, this is the vision. I'm going to start to execute. But
well, I think it's also, though, it's about the levels of leadership. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, Ben we have trust because and then because he's performed. And we've seen the results, and then he is now at the phase of attracting other leaders and, you know, growing other leaders, and we're seeing those results. So he's now got a proven track record, and Jillene and I and others are seeing the results. And I mean, trust is always at the bottom of that pyramid, always. So the best way for a leader to get buy-in is to instill trust that they're the wealth determiner. Right? And the best way to instill trust is to create wealth in people. And so I think it's really simple.
Yeah. And Jillene, you know, take us from there. I know you have stuff to say.
If we were to define vision for a second, right? And we're talking about growth, because if you're hiring someone who wants to move fast paced, they want to see growth, right? But Ben's vision wasn't the top of the mountain. He didn't say, okay, we're going to the top of Mount Everest. He said, we're just going to go to that hill right there. And that hill for some people in business could be their second hire or their third hire, or it could be, we're going to read this book and we're going to master the practices of this book, like the one thing, or whatever it might be. Like the vision was step by step for him. And he'd say, now it's like the next step is we're going to acquire this company, right? We're going to launch a coaching company. But it wasn't Mount Everest, it was just the next step. And I think that's what makes a very strong and visionary leader, is that they just talk about the next step. And then all of a sudden you see that you're 4 mountains ahead. Maybe not a Mount Everest quite yet, but you've
Yeah, Ben has a gift for simplifying things, I believe.
And just to piggyback and to amplify what Jillene was saying, I think he does talk about Mount Everest, but I think he focuses the action on the next step. So that's the magic. Ben's superpower, for sure, he has a couple, but his primary superpower, in my opinion, is his ability to make the complex simple and to explain it and to get buy-in on it. So I agree with Jillene that he's achieved mastery at delivering, getting people motivated and into action and excited about a next step that may not be a sexy next step, because he has painted this vision of what Mount Everest looks like. So it's this combination of both, if that makes sense.
And I know, you know, what I want to kind of dive into off of that, and Christy, hopefully this is close to what you were getting ready to say, or else we'll go back to you. But, you know, I know that you guys have grown with him. I mean, even via just in the last year or so, just being there, like, I know that there's been so much growth. And I mean, like so many others, I like camp out on the YouTube channel and I'm like listening to all the things that I, you know, to try to learn as well. But Jillene, you know, walk us through, like, what does it look like for that many years? Like, what has your growth looked like as a leader, and how have you changed? Because I mean, you started out as his administrative assistant and it has just so grown. So just how have you changed?
That's a really good question. You know, in the beginning, I was so focused on results and achievement because I just wanted to do something big every single day, and regardless of what it was. And back then, you know, I started in real estate, and gratefully today, I still love what I do, and I love the real estate industry, and it makes it so much easier to grow in an environment that you love with people that you love. And I had the right leader and I had the right industry, and the combination of the two is where the magic happened. And so my growth over the years stemmed from that. That was my foundation. And, you know, I started young, I started very achievement driven, but over the years realized that if I wanted to stay in this arena of growth and not just, you know, the 1% or, you know, I was looking for big growth. I was looking for huge growth in my life and our business. I realized that I needed to place more importance on relationships and developing the right relationships in my life. And of course, Ben was that first relationship for me, but then it was the people after that that was going to define my own growth. I was going to define theirs. And I placed an emphasis on relationships. So I'm so am now because I learned, like, one of my learning lessons, which you were probably going to ask me in the next question, is that after hiring maybe the wrong people for the right role, that my my happiness and my relationships really mattered, and I had to hire the right ones and get into business with the right ones. The right people for the right role, because no one's the wrong person. They could be the wrong person for the right role.
Yeah.
And Vija, how about you? How have you grown?
My growth in the last year since I've been in this role has been like 10 times. I cannot, I've grown a ton, and I've grown in humility. I've grown in servant leadership. I've grown in interpersonal communication skills. I've grown in truly growing through other people, whereas it's clear to me that before I was not as effective there, right? That I was a steamroller in the past. Looking back, I think that I was pushing my objective onto other people, and now I've learned to get buy-in and be patient with that process. I've grown. My ego is in check. I'm human, but I eat humble pie every day. I fail in front of a lot of people every day now. So I can't, there's so many things I've grown in, you know, I don't even know where to go.
I love that. I feel like the step you took into the leadership role that you have now versus leading your own business has allowed you to grow faster because of exactly what you said. You're failing in front of a huge audience now. 1,400, you're leading 1,400 people. You're very visible. And I think one of the qualities that you have, and I'm guessing you do too, Jillene, is that you have a very thick skin and you seek and crave input and feedback and course correction and all of that. What does that look like with you and Ben? What could it look like for a successful leadership team? Because I think I would classify both of you guys as successful leaders with Ben.
It happened just this morning. I hung up with Ben about a half an hour before this started. And, you know, I had a call with my team leaders this morning and asked them for some honest feedback on something. And they were not shy. And I have developed a rhino skin, Lindsay and Christy, but that doesn't mean I'm not human. And it doesn't mean that, you know, that it's not always easy to hear. What I find now though, is that I really truly only care about the company. And I mean, I really mean that. Like I can look at it through a third party lens now and say, it is best for the company if I hear this feedback. Because I don't matter anymore. It's just well beyond me now. I have so many people I feel responsible for. So that's the filter in which I receive feedback isn't personal anymore. It's just about what's going to be best for my people and their people and their people. So, I mean, Ben, specifically, just leadership lessons for those of you watching that, you know, want to maybe emulate Ben. And by the way, I just want to say, Ben is the best leader I have ever worked for. And what's interesting is, or with, most of the time when you talk to people and they admire somebody or, you know, have a lot of respect for them, and then they go behind the curtain, like, you know, they go work, you know, I've seen it with people that go work at a corporate office or work for a celebrity or someone that they've looked up to. Usually the guild wears off the lily, right? Usually what happens is that the varnish comes off and they're disillusioned. So for me to say over a year later that I'm more impressed with Ben now than when I started should hold some weight. I mean, he's really amazing. I actually think Ben's grown a lot this year. I don't think it's just me. I think that him and I are good for each other. We push each other. We don't always have easy conversations. Jillene, you and I were talking about that earlier, that, you know, we all have our unique relationships with our leaders. And, you know, mine with Ben is a very, very direct and open dialogue. So that works well for me and that works well for him. In fact, what doesn't work well for either of us is when we think the other person's holding back. So you know, for trust to remain in our relationship, we just both made a commitment to each other that we would be extremely open and honest. We also have what I call a 24-hour rule. And that is that if either of us are feeling resentment or upset at the other, we have to say something to the other within 24 hours, because I have a tendency to be passive aggressive and just bottle it up. And yeah, and so as a result, Ben and I have really healthy conflict. Like it's probably the poster child for how to do conflict. It's a it's like a high conflict of ideas and a low conflict of ego. You know, we just take each other out of the equation and we work through issues, right? It's just super, super healthy and it doesn't fester.
So let me ask you a question, because we have a lot of people listening who are not your personality profile necessarily. And I think what you do really well is you take the emotion out of the conflict so that you can come to the best solution for both people. How would you counsel people listening when they're not necessarily super comfortable with conflict in the first place?
Yeah,
it's important for them.
I just coached someone last night who's more of an operations, personality on this exact topic. And I have a couple tactics that I would recommend. One of them is, if you can't regulate your emotions and you're really upset and you feel like your voice is going to shake and you feel like you're going to go in and cry. One tactic is to visualize a window in between you and the other person where you're hearing what they're saying and you're seeing what they're doing, but you have this invisible separation where, so you're pulling yourself out of it, right? So it's just kind of a mental visual Jedi mind trick, so to speak, to kind of pretend that you're watching this through a window. Yeah, the second one is what I said earlier, is to look at this conflict through a filter of the organizational good. Take the personal stuff out of it and just go, okay, if I were the other person, or if I was running this company, what would be best for the company, and to try to filter it that way and objectify yourself.
Yeah, we used to actually, on my team, once upon a time, gave our team a name, an internal name, which was Cloud 9, because everybody wanted to be on Cloud 9. And when we would talk about the business, we would talk about Cloud 9, like what's the best for Cloud 9 instead of what's working for you or what's working for me. It takes a little emotion out of it. Love that.
Vija touched on trust, and I think trust comes from working closely together with someone for a period of time, and that period of time could be a year, but it's most likely 2 years, it's 5 years, could be even longer. But after working with someone closely for that long, you absolutely, if you're staying in business and choosing to stay in business together for that long, you have a strong level of trust, right? And for Ben, over the years, what he started to do was, after that trust was there, would back away and really empower me, because he trusted me. He had spent that time with me. We had shared a small, like 8x8 office for quite a few years. And that's where all the trust got built, right? And then after that trust was built, he got out of my way and he said, okay, just take this and run with it. But he didn't do that without spending those years with me first.
Did he say take it and run with it? Or did you say, Ben, I'm ready to take it and run with it? Give it to me.
I think it was a combination of both. Actually, there was one time, which is ironic because he's talking about his 6 weeks, his road trip, Ben, right, where he left for 6 weeks on his last leadership call with Vija. He did that with me, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 8 years ago, where he left for 30 days. And I was surprised that he left for 30 days, yet he had spent those years with me in an office and had this element of trust where he knew that everything was going to be fine, if not more than fine. And then when he came back, he was walking into a house that hadn't burned down. And honestly, I think that's where the title for myself as a leader changed. I think it was probably that moment. So how do we do that for our people?
Yeah, are you offering them the opportunity to succeed and grow into themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Well, and what do you think? I mean, was there a moment or something you can pinpoint besides that too, where, it really felt like this was your opportunity now, like we were passing the baton, like go do it. And did you see him as a leader jumping back in and saving things, or did he allow you to make mistakes and really allow you to, fail forward, is what we always talk about?
Well, I think there's one thing we should make clear, and that is that Ben allowed me to see his own mistakes. And that was a precursor. That preceded me taking on whatever it was, such as hiring people, because he allowed me to watch him hire people and make mistakes, right? Or whatever business initiatives he had. I learned by his example, and then he passed the baton. But he didn't necessarily say, here's how you do it. Here's the steps. Let's map it out. It's perfectly ready. Okay, here's your 30, 60, 90, and every little detail is in place. Here you go. He led by example. But it wasn't just an example of perfection. It was an example of learning from the mistakes. I would say that is his example of those imperfections helped me grow more so than the things that he did really, really well, because there was obviously a lot of that too.
Yeah.
I love that. That's huge insight.
What about you with Via? Like, was that, did he just release it to you right away, or was there some, micromanagement at all, or what did that look like?
No and yes. and here I just love what Jillene said, and I found myself thinking, when she said that about one of the reasons I think Ben has been such a great leader for me. I mean, I had a big learning curve, and I still do. And I went from, a team of, at its peak, at 17 people at its peak, to, 6 team leaders and, almost 1,400 agents, not almost overnight.
Right.
And what Ben has done to just, again, to piggyback on what Jillene said, what the best thing Ben has done for me is he's provided a safe environment to fail forward. His graciousness and his support every time I screw up is the only reason I'm still here. Every time I screw up, it's pretty much, Via, this, you're doing great. You're doing awesome. And I don't think that was a screw up. I think that was a really great lesson. Let's focus on the wins. He's so incredibly supportive with the screw ups that for leaders watching over time, what happens is it just makes me more bold. It makes me not scared to jump into the arena. And it actually ties me closer to him. I got some feedback from a meeting yesterday, and I was on the phone with Ben almost first thing this morning because it's important for me to be the one to tell him about my fail right away. So he trusts me, and then I trust him, and then it builds from there, right? As far as what you're really saying is delegated authority, what you're really asking me about is how long did it take Ben to give me some autonomy, I think, and it took him a while. And I have a couple thoughts on that. One of them is I didn't have any expectations that it wouldn't take him a while. So I didn't push it. I never pushed it until organically the time was right. And I'm thinking of one example. There's this thing that he was approving at a market center level. And I never pushed him to get any delegated authority. And then one day I was realizing that a lot of my phone calls and a lot of my texts with my team leaders, it would just be quicker and my life would be easier. And I understood it. I think this is about 6 months in, and I understood it enough that I really should be approving this, right? Mm-hmm. So I was up in Bellingham on a Saturday or a Sunday for my daughter's soccer game. And I pinged him and I said, hey, let's go for a walk and get some ice cream. I have some things I want to talk to you about. So we went for a walk with my daughter, which was really funny. She called him Mr. Ben. And I went through this list, but really I didn't care about the list. What I cared about was the last thing. And I said, the last thing is, I think I'm ready to make these approvals from here going forward. Are you okay with that? And he goes, yeah, I think I am. And I go, great. I know I feel really capable of making these, decisions, but I want to kind of honor you and know how you would like me to make them. And I just sat there on the notes of my phone. He goes, okay, for 0 to 2, do this. For 2 to 5, do this. From 5 to 7, do this. From 7 to 10, do this. And so I just put it on the notes of my phone. And then moving forward, I took over those approvals, right? That's one example of many where the timing was right. And I waited. My ego didn't get in the way. Like I waited till I really felt ready. And so then he trusts me because now I make good judgment calls. So.
Well, and is that something that you guys, I know when you work with somebody like Jillene has, from the very beginning, and you guys are together so often, you start to think like that leader a little bit, right? Like you take on those thoughts and those challenges, and you just know kind of like inside what they're going to do in certain situations. Do you feel like that took you a while to get there or no? And I think that's something that like a lot of leaders really struggle with, like just giving up, like that stuff and just being like, okay, they know me, they know how I'm going to think. And if they make a decision that like isn't exactly what I would have done, then we just have to talk about it. Right. And I think what I'm hearing you say is he does a really good job with that. Like there's no anger and craziness. It's very, here's how it is.
I think what I've observed with you guys and with Ben from a distance, obviously, is that Ben as a leader has helped you learn how to think. he doesn't necessarily teach you how to do. How to do is the lesser important thing. And I think that's a mistake that a lot of leaders make, is they're all focused on the how do we do, what should my number two do, instead of teaching them how to think. What did Ben teaching you how to think? How did that look?
Christy, so back to my comment about spending time with Ben and really being able to be a fly on the wall and shadow him. I did that for a lot of years. And I know Vija, she drove up to Bellingham once a week for a really long time. I remember that, where we spent that time with Ben and was able to really look on as an observer of his behavior and his leadership style and his example. And I think that alone has really helped us be able to read his mind as a leader more than otherwise. But I think that there is a danger of autonomy. And I think the danger of autonomy is like, Vija and I have it, right? Ben has given us autonomy, he's empowered us, and there are some dangers to that, because I think it can cause you to make decisions and just assume that you don't need to seek advice or just seek input, right? It doesn't mean that you're seeking someone to make the decision for you. I think that when we have a challenge or we're seeking leadership advice from someone we admire, the moment we think we're bothering them is the moment that we stun our potential. So just not making assumptions and saying, listen, I'm going to send that text. And in that text, I'm going to share what I think the vision is or what I think the next steps are, and just get some feedback on it and not feel like I'm bothering my leader.
Yeah. So what does that look like for you guys? Because a lot of teams, I'm sorry, Vija, a lot of teams struggle with that communication. How frequent is it? I'm nitty gritty. I'm an ops mind. So I know my ops people are thinking, do you meet regularly once a week? Do you text on a daily basis? Do you have regular check-in times? Is it just on the fly when you need it? What does it look like? What's the real behind the scenes?
I just was going to say about autonomy really quick, and then I'm happy to answer that. I think it's a really important point that Jillene brought up. And that is that if I wanted autonomy, I probably wouldn't be here. I think that people think they want autonomy. I think there's been times in my life where I thought I wanted. And Jillene coined a phrase that I actually, I'll admit it, just in a vulnerable moment, that I was really feeling last week, which is leadership lonely. And if I really wanted autonomy, I probably wouldn't be here and work for Ben. What I think everybody wants is to not be micromanaged. Mm-hmm. And I think that when I came in, I was very, very purposeful about me being the one. Pardon me?
You're good.
I thought someone said something. I was really purposeful about me being the one to reach out to Ben constantly. I mean, he makes fun of me sometimes, like if you ever hear him talk, like Vija sends 51 texts a day. I was very purposeful because I knew that he had to trust me and know what I was thinking and what my reactions were, because we're remote. I'm 2 hours away from him. So I knew that I had to proactively overloop him so that he would feel, ironically, that was going to give me more autonomy than not, which is weird. It sounds counterintuitive, right? But I'm the one keeping the kite string in. And the way, and I decided early on how to use my leader. And I think that's another good lesson. I decided early on that the best use of Ben's time isn't in the day-to-day. So that's where I'm more forceful. If Ben and I are going to do this, it's because we're going to fight because he feels like a papa bear about his business. And I'm trying to put him in his highest and best use. That's really where our conflict comes from, right? And which is a really high level of respect. It's a high level conflict, right? It's a high level conflict. So for me, with delegated authority and autonomy, I'm a mama bear about protecting his time. And that's where, by the way, where conflict sets in. Communication is so frequent, I can't even tell you. I think that it's one of my biggest advices to any of you guys who have a direct report that are watching, any of you. You cannot over communicate to your leader. You can't do it. The feeling I get, my team leaders who overloop me and text me all the time, I trust more. I know them better. I coach them better. I'm in sync with them better. We finish each other's sentences. That I model that to Ben. I overloop Ben all the time. I don't burden him though. What I do is constantly on his phone. He could show you his phone. It's no need to respond, just looping you. No need to respond, just looping you. And what happens is, guess what? When he responds, he cares about something. So the burden's on me to interact with Ben. It's not on Ben to interact with me, or I failed. So that's my stance on.
And you'd be surprised too, with the hundreds of emails and text messages that he gets in a day. He reads all of them. Maybe not all the emails, but if he sees someone in his world that works with him as a leader like Vija, he's going to read that email. And I love that example, because that I've taken that to my world, where when I get an email or a text from one of my people, just realizing that this is really important for me to pay attention to. And if I can't respond now, I've got to respond later. And so he's very exemplary through that.
Is that, Vija, it reminds me of the conversation we were having earlier this week about responsiveness, and that responsiveness, I believe, is a really, really important key trait. It's measured on the KPA, it's measured in our conversations, how people communicate. And I believe among leaders in an organization, responsiveness, no matter what your role, is really important.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, you know, for anybody watching, probably the number one thing you can do to ingratiate yourself to your boss, your direct report, your leader, whoever you want to call them, is to loop them in without the burden of them having to do anything, right? So, I mean, it's more of a, you know, I don't want Ben to ever feel like he's out of the loop. The more comfortable he is with understanding what's going on in his own company, the more comfortable he's going to have delegating authority to me.
Yeah, because I think what you're doing is you're communicating to him how you think. You're sharing information, but the information is revealing what your thought process was. And the sooner he's comfortable with your thought process, the sooner he's going to let go, right? We have a question that came in from someone watching. If you were able to go back and start over again, what would you do differently? Or would you do anything differently? Is there something that you can share that would help people who are in the newer area of a relationship with their the leader, shotgun leader, that would maybe accelerate? Or does it just take time? Is there any advice you'd have there?
When I first started, I didn't have the unlimited tools and resources that we have now in the real estate industry. And so we had to make a lot of mistakes to fail forward and actually grow. So if I were to start all over again and it was today and we had all of those resources, I would make sure that I didn't have too much pride to just take someone else's product or what they do great and just mimic it, which is the highest form of flattery, right? Sometimes you can take what someone else is doing great and do it even better. And so, and Ben and I did that. You know, we met with top real estate companies across the nation in the beginning and took some of the pieces and the things that they were doing back to our own businesses. But I think that is just the number one thing, is not holding on to too much pride and thinking that I have to create and do all of this on my own. Whether it's the products that you need or the people that you need both, right? And not thinking that you can do it all with your own power versus using leverage.
Vija, anything you would do differently?
Yeah, I'm glad Julie went first, because it gave me a little time. Because at first I would have said no, but I there is one thing. I have had about 1,020 fails in counting since I started.
Enough to be on stage with Gary Keller about failure.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm on the cover of a magazine about failure. So like, it's just, you know, that's a gift.
That's when you know
failure.
That's when I'm the queen of failure, literally the queen of failure. But I will say that the one lesson, so there's fails and then there's fails, and I had a fail. And I have to be sensitive, but I'm going to say it in this way, that I wish I would have been more forthcoming in and sharing what was going on in my brain on a couple topics sooner. I think that I probably took a little long on a couple things. On one thing specifically, I think I took a little long to get into action. And, you know, Gary talks about juggling balls, or is it Jay Papasan, and there's a glass ball. So they talk about you can juggle all you want, but just don't let the glass balls fall to the ground. It's we have, you know, I probably let something go too long, and I'm not shy. In that case, it was just me, like, not wanting to overstep. I have a very forceful personality, and sometimes I almost overcompensate for that because I'm so aggressive that I need to balance that a little more. And so it would have been a safe place for me to have really talked about this thing and jumped in a little sooner. It would have been. It's on me, not Ben, right? And I didn't, you know, so that's probably my one regret.
Is that where your 24-hour rule came from?
No, the 24-hour rule was when I started, because I just get passive aggressive. It's what I do. It's funny. The one thing, if you get to know me, I mean, I do have a very aggressive personality. I mean, I understand that. And the one weird thing about me, though, is when I get mad, I get quiet. Like, it's weird. You would not guess that. If you knew me, you would guess the opposite. So when I get quiet, it's really scary because I'm not really that quiet of a person. Mm-hmm. And so that Ben instigated that right when we came together on the role.
Let me ask you this, because and we've only got a few more minutes, and I know that people have got to be wondering this, but when you guys have like an amazing idea, who is Ben in that situation? Like, is it like run with it? Do you run it by him? Like, how do you get the buy-in from him, or do you just implement? What does that look like? Because there's a lot of people that have challenges with, like, I really have this good idea that I feel good about, but then the leader, like, it's not their idea, so they don't let them move forward, you know?
I think with ideas, they can be playing the short game or they can be playing the long game. And hopefully it's the long game, right? Because that's where we're going to see the biggest impact. So if it's the long game, what's the plan that you have behind it? So I think even if it's not perfect, writing just a one-page plan on the idea that you have, or drawing a picture of it. I've got a Sharpie in my hand, which is ironic because Ben always uses a blank piece of paper and a Sharpie to write out ideas. Yeah. So, and he is a very visual person. So knowing your leader's style, if I brought something to him on a piece of paper and a Sharpie, then he just adds to it. So he might take his own piece of paper and a Sharpie and say, well, okay, awesome. Well, what if we did this? And he'll actually draw it out there with you and take the time to hear your idea. He's never rushed me through any of my ideas, even when they were maybe a little bit more emotionally driven versus playing the long game. And I appreciate that because over the years, I look back and I think, oh, wow, that was a really immature idea or whatever it might be. But he always listened to me no matter what. And I really appreciate that in a leader. And now he adds to them.
Love that collaboration.
Yeah, it's totally different, you know, for me. And so I'm probably speaking to more of the sales, you know, like I'm just, you know, what I feel strongly about telling everybody about when you have an idea for a leader is I am relentless. I am really, really relentless. I don't let it go. I don't get discouraged. I you know, continually push to get time and attention on it. And depending on how strong I feel about it, I offer to do the work. So I don't put it on Ben. I'm thinking of two things now. One of them, I typed out a business plan on the notes of my iPhone on the way back from masterclass a few weeks ago, and texted it to him about 3 hours in. So I wasn't even home yet, and was on the phone with him an hour after that. So it was like 7 p.m. on a Friday night a couple weeks ago. And I won't let that one go. That was a really good one. So that one I'll have to, he'll kick the can down the road, and partly because he's busy, partly because he's going to filter people out that way. And I know him well. And so I know that I don't want this one filtered out. The other thing I do with Ben a lot, and I think it's a really good practice for anybody watching, for any leader, is I plant seeds. I do it all the time. So I'll text him or talk to him and I'll go, okay, I'm thinking this. This is what I'm thinking. Don't do anything yet I want you to sleep on it. And I want your brain on this tomorrow, next week, 3 days from now. It's very unusual for me to spring something on him and not give him time to process. I don't, in fact, as a rule, I just don't do that with him. And I don't think you should do that with anybody. So I'm very, like, even if I have to text him at 11 at night to get it in before the next day, I will do that.
Love that. What would you guys say is your biggest success with Ben or on your own as a leader? I know you have a lot.
Yeah. The biggest
I don't know how to answer that. Not because I don't feel successful at all, but because I think we've had so many wins and some losses together. I think, okay. I think our biggest success is that we both put in the time this year into the working relationship and it's built an incredibly strong foundation that we are both ready for huge, massive company growth. That's what I would say.
I love that, because I think that's probably one of the biggest fails Lindsay and I both see around the industry. So I love that you guys have committed to that.
Mm-hmm.
Jillene, what would you say is one of your happiest or best successes that you've had with Ben in 14 years?
Yeah, this might sound a little bit vague, but I don't think we've ever stopped thinking or acting big. And when you have a world like that, it continues to provide opportunities for people. And so I talk about that with the people that I'm around every day is, well, what does growth look like to you? And if growth looked like this, could it help provide you more opportunities? So I think leadership is providing a path of opportunity so that where someone starts is not where they have to end. And I think that's truly the biggest success. Like, and I wouldn't have said this at 22, but seeing people's lives change through the opportunity model that's created in our company I feel like my life is almost complete. It's extra complete because I adopted my son. So I will tell you there's nothing bigger and more accomplished to me than that. But there's a lot of other lives we've been able to impact just by staying growth minded and then giving opportunities to our people.
I think you're a brilliant example of that. I think everyone in the industry looks at you and sees your transformation as a person, as a businesswoman, as a mother, all of that. And a lot is obviously because of who you are, but it's also because of Ben's leadership. So you're a brilliant example of that. Love it.
Thank you.
Well, so we're going to give you guys a chance to talk through how people can get in touch with you with questions or anything like that. But I think Jacqueline Smith actually has a great question for you, Vija, and she wants to know if you were always relentless with your ideas, needs, and communication. Were you always like that, or is that something you've grown into?
I think Jillene could answer that just as well as I can. And yes.
Yes.
I mean, I've been driving up to Bellingham since 2012. And I remember at one point he's like, we can do this over the phone. And I used to, actually something Jillene said earlier really resonated with me. I used to say, Ben, the content that you coach and teach me is great. But what I really get out of this is observing you in action and then having you break it down so I can understand how you think. And Jillene, 2013 or 14, we started that practice. And I almost feel like I've apprenticed, if that I don't know if that's probably the right word. I almost feel like I've apprenticed because we got into this rhythm that we're still in today where he describes his actions to me. It's just this rhythm we have. Like yesterday, I go, hey, why did you do this? Or why did you do that? And then he rolls right into what he was thinking and his reasoning behind it. And we're at a point now where I can predict Ben's response. So can Jillene 80% of the time, maybe, but I've always been relentless.
Yeah. I think that's a great point that you just brought up about asking why you did something, not how do you do it, when do you do it, but why.
Yeah.
And the why with a leader oftentimes is surrounded by nuance. So I think it's important to understand the nuance of it. It's not just what's on paper. And the nuance is through dialogue. It's through the conversation. It's not through monologue. And, regarding Vija's relentlessness, I don't think it actually would have worked for her if she wasn't willing to go and take action on it. I think she could have been relentless as heck and it not got her anywhere if she wasn't
yeah.
take action on the things that she was relentless about.
I would agree. Watching you close hand, Via, I have never, ever in my life seen someone who executes faster. You're literally, when you would go up for your coaching with Ben, you were executing on what you discussed before you got home while you were in your car. If you went to recruit select class or to career visioning, you were already on the phone doing it. And that's a sign of a leader. I love that about you.
You know, what's really funny is when we started this podcast and you were doing the intro, Ben texted me to do something and you didn't notice, but during the podcast, I already got it in action. So yeah, it's true. I think I'm a fast executor, actually.
So do you guys want to tell us how to connect with you and also about your leadership group, which is amazing?
It is.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I am hiring a really special person actually in our world. I'm hiring actively searching for a team leader. If any of you guys, if this resonated with you on any level, please reach out to me. I'm super easy to get on social media. Vija at benkinney.com. Vija is spelled V as in Victor, I-J-A. And I would like to invite you, Ben and I was relentless about this, Jacqueline. Ben and I started a leadership mentorship program that I tagged Ben onto, but then we both have, really taken the reins on it. We have a Facebook group that you can request to join. It's, what is it? Ben Kinney Leadership Mentoring Program. Is that what it is?
Yes.
Yeah. Lindsay, help. Yeah, that's what it is. And we do webinars.
We'll post the link in the comments.
Yeah.
We do webinars every month or so. We just did one yesterday and it's going to be published and I'm really excited about it. So thanks.
Awesome.
It's super good. And if you're listening to this podcast later, because this lives long lived, Vija will probably still be looking for leaders in the Ben Kinney Company organization. So still reach out to her.
Yes, absolutely. And Jillene, how can they get in touch with you really quickly?
So I think my cell is actually the best right now by text, 360-303-6994. Yes, I'm giving it out. I've had that number since I was 16, so it's here to stay. But I think, on a personal connection, Facebook's awesome, and it's Jillene Snell. I'm on Instagram, and it's not business related for the most part. A lot of it is just my boating pictures and my lifestyle pictures and pictures of my kids. So I'd love for you to follow me on Instagram as well. And then in person, I'll be at Family Reunion in February. I love to make and set up connections there. So reach out to me and let me know if you're going to be at Family Reunion in 2020. And then Ben's teaching Win, Make, Give in May. So that's May 4th through May 7th. It is a life-changing conference. I will tell you, it's the best conference I've ever been to. And you don't have to be in the real estate industry for it to apply. It's incredible. So you can bring your partner, your friends, your family, and you can learn more about how to sign up at winmakegive.com. I didn't mean for that to be an infomercial about it, but that one really has made a big impact. So I'd love to see you guys there.
Well, and Kyler, why don't you stick that into the page as well? Because he's sitting there tagging everything. So, well, we really, really appreciate you guys so much. And we're going to let you go. We've already taken enough of your time. Thank you for being a part of this. We really appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I'm going to stop the live stream and then we can stay on, Christy.
It still says live.
Yeah.